Welcome to Chaos2Cured podcast with Jeffrey Freed and Kirk Patrick Miller. We did a short one on this earlier where we talked about overload. We felt it was an important enough topic, and we just barely touched on it. And this also ties in. We did something in the first season about perception of time and how important that is to both diagnosing things when you're talking about anxiety, depression, bipolar, autism, everything, perception of how we perceive time. So we did a show on that. This is going a little deeper into it. So, feel free, to reach out to us with questions. We're trying our best to explain this in layman's terms and its relevance in this world. So we're going to talk about it now. It's called critical flicker fusion frequency. So CFF, you can look it up online and Google and stuff like that. So every creature on the planet has an ability to take in images, the world, the surroundings. So if you think of every sound we have, every color, every scent, just imagine every scent. We take all of that in every second. We take it in frames. Under duress, we take in more frames. It has been linked to people's metabolism. So creatures' metabolisms that have higher metabolisms typically have a higher critical flicker fusion frequency. So CFF, again, housefly sees images and takes in the world at about 250 frames per second. So if they're flying past the TV, the world is slow. They see our fastest TVs, to give people an idea, are around 120 frames per second. So housefly, common 250 frames, they're seeing it at twice that speed. So half of the time, the TV is off to a housefly, half of the time the TV is on. Now, to a sea turtle, they see 30 frames per second. Humans, 60 to 120. And again, under duress, we might see a little bit more. The reason this is important is that when we're living in a world, and Jeffrey, I'm going to jump over to you because again, we're living in a world where it pushes and it presses us to observe more and to take in more data per second all of the time. We are pressured to produce more per second. Our entire world is pushing us towards a higher critical flicker fusion frequency. So my hypothesis, and I really, really think if psychiatrists and experts in mental health, and honestly in sports and every field, it doesn't matter if you're talking about testing for the SATs, time is a massively important factor. So Jeffrey, you kind of, I know by this point you get where I'm kind of going. Whether it's, why people, I even have theories on why some of the hypersensitivities like certain textures, and that also like with food, and that goes into a critical flicker. Or again, this is hard to say. That's why I just abbreviate it as CFF. So Jeffrey, what's your take on kind of what you just heard me say? And I kind of threw you in the fire like I always do. How the world has changed, how it's pushing it, and how that's kind of affecting our mental health and individuals and how we deal with it.
Okay, I'll be glad to do that. The interesting thing to me, there's a lot of interesting things, but the most interesting thing to me is I see so many people who process visually and slowly. And in order to be their best, what they need to do is they need to intake information, turn it into an image, and then turn it into words, and vice versa. When they get the words, they need to transfer it into an image. So this is taking them out of their game. Processing rapidly and visually kind of don't go together. You'll jump to conclusions You'll be wrong half the time because you're not bringing your best asset to the front, and that is the ability to intake stuff, visually examine it, and then reply. That's how so many people, really do well. And a lot of times, this constant sensory bombardment, I believe that it's becoming part and parcel with modern day life. There's a constant pressure to do things faster. Everybody advertises faster internet, faster phone connections, faster is better. And that gets embedded in people's psyche. And faster is not necessarily better. If you're going faster, you're more likely to make a mistake, do something impulsive that you wouldn't do if you had more time to process things. This pressure is readily available when you hear people argue. There's people start to talk and they come out with a reasonable argument. Somebody else interrupts them and they interrupt back, and it's chaos. And that's most of what interviewing is like at this point. And this is subtle, and it's, I guess, insidious. It creeps up on you. And when it creeps up on you, it takes you out of your game, particularly if you're a visual thinker. Now, people who are word thinkers don't have anywhere near as much problem with it because they don't have much translation going on. They're fast verbally because they think in words. People who think in images, and they're by far, in my opinion, the smarter of the two major styles. They are taken out of their game, and they do impulsive things that they wouldn't do if they had more time to consider things. They hurry, they say things that they don't mean. And the other part of it is constantly being rapidly barraged by sensory stuff. Visual and sensory stuff is really, really exhausting. And it just makes you tired and stressed, impulsive, sick. It's not a good thing, Kirk, in my opinion. And nobody really knows what it is.
Well, we're getting reactions. You're seeing people, and I don't, everyone listening to this, please understand this is, I never make light of any of these situations. We're trying to help explain some things from, again, we're not what you would consider to be experts from the book sense of the word. And we're experts because we have lived it, dealt with it, and figured out how to thrive with it. And we help others to do that. I really want to make sure that's very clear. We can learn things two different ways. We can learn it from a perspective of, reading about something. And there's only so far that takes us. And the reason I bring this up again is it's hard to find help for people that are either on the spectrum. If in my case, quad diagnosed with different things, it's very hard to find a single person that understands those. It's hard to find one qualified psychiatrist that has dealt with any of the things I have to any degree of severity at all. So there are some things, actually everything you can learn by doing through experience. That's how we've learned everything through history. I bring that up just because when we're talking about this, there's a lot of experts that are weighing in. We listen to experts all the time that have PhDs, that have MDs. And we listen to how we should learn, how we should, what we should process, what we should do. The problem is that we have put so much faith into one system that only rewards one type of thinker. And again, I don't mean to say that those thinkers are not good. One of my heroes is Hippocrates. And one of the things I loved about Hippocrates was he looked at seizures, and he definitively just assumed and just absolutely was sure that he was right, that it had nothing to do with demons. It had to do with something with the brain. And it was just absurd for anybody to think anything had to do with, again, spirits possessing someone. That's what they thought seizures were. You have Plato, you have Galileo, you have these people that were certain of things, and all the experts around the world said this was not the case. We've seen arguments, and I'm not even going to get into that with politics and, health and the current situations of some things. What I do know is that we are missing a key and vital part, and there's information there that's really important. So again, we process things. Everyone processes things, every creature on this planet in at least sequential orders of images. Now, when we're talking about people that are on the spectrum, and like you were saying, Jeffrey, with people that are processing things more visually, spatially, for me, I don't see things in order. They're out of sequence a lot of times. So I know my niece has been criticized at school for not delivering something in time. The class only has so much time, right? Again, this pressure. So they're talking about a subject. She has this spontaneous idea that ties in to the idea. To everyone else in the class, they hear a disruption and interruption. And it's really, really frustrating for me, because I'm coming from an emotional standpoint as both an uncle and someone who's dealt with this. The teacher looks at you, tries to give you enough time. They don't have enough time to let you wrap up your idea. There's brilliance being lost in this world because we are too impatient to listen. We are too impatient to let a different type of mind explain something. We only give credit to people that have a piece of paper that says they're an expert. We don't care about the mother who has dealt with an autistic child, and she has lived with them. She has figured out every way to soothe and help that child. We don't listen to them because they don't have a PhD. They don't have a master's in psychology. We ignore their input. And at the same time, we have everyone on social media that's an expert. So we have misinformation everywhere. So again, that's why we're doing this show. And that's why I wanted to talk about, again, this was not tangential. It's important to understand there's a lot of information going around everywhere. Our show is, we try to be like upfront and honest about what we're talking about. And this is something we're very passionate about. For me, I have noticed anxiety is through the roof in this world. Panic, fear, anger. We are, and as you said, Jeffrey, you said it so well, we are being bombarded sensory from news, from our internet. Our internet is down for 5 seconds and people are angry about it. Nothing is fast enough. Nothing is quick enough. We want answers instantly. Well, that only raises and again, this is a hypothesis, and I would love for scientists and researchers to jump into this. I think we can build medications based off of our critical flicker frequency. It's a testable event. I'm not sure if that's the right word for it, but they've used it for testing for issues that are physiological. I'm trying to remember if it was liver or kidneys, but regardless, they use it to actually test specific things. As we age, our critical flicker fusion frequency, so our CFF, drops. There's a physiological thing that's happening, and it's testable, which means, guess what? There's medications that can be developed for this. We have alcohol, and guess what? We have psychedelics they're looking into. There's medical marijuana. And no one wants to talk about any of these things. But guess what? I guarantee you that all of those medications affect how we process time. CFF, again, I think is a key feature of everything. I am testing this with my clients. I'm testing this with my anyone who's performing, who comes to me for anxiety issues, for mental health. When we're talking about testing in schools, everything is timed. Everything is about, if you think I have to do this, I have to do homework. That is a time-based equation. I need to do this. It's time, need. Need has a time attached to it. Almost everything we feel pressure about is based on time, which increases our critical flicker fusion frequency, which increases our metabolism. We're dying earlier. We're having problems with more anger. We're losing our temper. We're losing our attention. It all starts pointing to speed and time. And that's one of those things where do you think like what I'm saying is completely out of this world, or do you think there's actually some validity to it?
I think there's a lot of validity to it. It's totally not a waste of time thinking about that. It's also subtle, and it's slow. It comes on. Ironic word talking about this, but it comes on to the culture slowly. It seeps in, and it's everywhere. If you don't go fast, then you're going to miss something. And there's so much out there that you could be paying attention to. So it's literally a case of cultural TMI, too much information. And that is not, that there's good things about that. I mean, if you're out in the woods and a lion's coming, it wouldn't be the woods, the savannah, and a lion is coming after you. Yeah, you want to think fast. But it's creating an atmosphere of all the chemicals that our body produces that are stress hormones are elevated. Most doctors virtually all doctors will tell you that. So we're feeding into a generation of people who are constantly being bombarded by stress chemicals and pressure. And people don't do well under those situations. They just don't. Careful. If someone were to come on Fox News or CBS or MSNBC and slowly come out with their thoughts and talk about logic steps, they're just cut off immediately. We just go away. They're out of step. It's not fast enough. So we're being reset to think quicker. And quicker is not always, there's times it's good, but it's not always the way to be. We're losing critical thinking skills. Our bodies are paying the price. Our brains are paying the price. And the reason that, we've started to go down in our lifespans from, I think, 81, 10 years ago to 78 now. And we have way better medications that can keep you alive no matter how sick you are. And it's still going down. And the big killer is stress. And the big contributor to stress and pressure is having to do so much and have such a limited amount of time to do it. People can't sleep. Insomnia is important. They can't shut their brains down. There's a lot of bad stuff going on.
There's a good book for a lot of the parents out there. And it's something I ask, especially really serious clients that come to me because they want to be absolutely phenomenal at something. And it's by Seth Godin, and it's called the Dip. It's a very interesting book, but it kind of goes into in a different way. We're expected to be experts at everything, and it's not even realistic. There's the pressure that we're facing. And again, everything is based on time. And the reason why I wanted to talk about critical flicker fusion, and I'm going to just throw out some hypotheses so experts can either yell at me or join in. But one of them is, you look at autistic children, one of the biggest issues is sweets. They really struggle with food. If you have someone that is processing and mentally processing 300 times the amount of information that everyone else is, they're burning more calories. Their metabolism is higher. I really believe two factors play into why they eat sweets. It's time based, so they can open something up quickly. Most things that are high sugar are are not, you don't have to cook. You don't have to you don't have to wait for 5 to 10 minutes. It's instantaneous gratification plus a need for their metabolism because they're processing more information. And that goes for all children with hypersensitivity issues. These are all hypotheses of mine. I always had tons of sugar when I was little. I had massive anxiety. I had OCD. The OCD is just about killing me now. I've been sick for weeks with recovering from COVID-19, and my anxiety has gone through the roof after having that. So I know anxiety is creeping up. There's been heart problems and health problems and mental health problems due to post-COVID-19 infections. But my point about bringing that up is, with anxiety and with pressure and with speed, the whole world is on edge. And that's what we had kind of talked about it in our show Overloaded. And we really, I was still not with it mentally when we did that show. And so we didn't really get into the topic very well. And so I kind of wanted to tell some people and talk to some family members that are dealing with this. If you have a child that's dealing with severe anxiety, stage performance, OCD, even, somebody, I did this with one of my nieces who's on the spectrum, and she's just brilliant and often tries to explain things again for too long. So I have her, or I have somebody, anybody, this works for anyone, close their eyes. So picture something, whether it's on the wall, it's a clock, it's a TV, close their eyes as they breathe in, and try to picture as many details as they can. And then as they breathe out, open their eyes, try to look at the same thing again, close their eyes again, breathe in. So you mix the breathing techniques in with the visual. The reason why I've suggested this is it's you're mentally and you're consciously trying to slow down your images. So if you think of a frame rate, you're taking in one frame, you're trying to analyze it, you're slowing time down, or at least your perception of it. And I found it's worked phenomenally well for myself. It seemed to be working pretty well for the clients that I've tested it out with. It's kind of new. Again, there's no studies on how to slow down our critical flicker fusion frequency. It's all about how we can speed it up. Nobody wants to slow it down. Everybody wants to be faster, but the best athletes in the world can slow time. You've mentioned that before in a previous show. The best performers, the best artists, they can control the world around them. And again, we can teach ourselves to do that via neuroplasticity, which we've also talked about. As far as like time being in the school, we've talked about, time being an issue for that, for diagnosing. Have you found any particular things that have helped, and again, people listening, Jeffrey has been a specialist and worked with people for, thousands of young ones. I'm one of them, for so long. I don't even want to get into how many decades, but again, with your experience, what are some things you've seen that have helped people kind of maybe deal with, or at least calm themselves down immediately? And this is such an important topic, and that's why we keep going back to it.
Yeah. One of the best ones, and I know it works, there's no doubt in my mind, is you start out with guided visualization with apps, for example, like Calm, and other ones that teach you to slow down. And they give you images, visual images. It's all auditory, but you turn it into visual images. And you get to the point where you can slow everything down. And if you do it for a while, you don't even have to go through the guided visualization. You can just remember the feeling and slow things down. You learn how to breathing techniques. They're extremely important. And it's really simple. If you're in a panic attack and you want to slow things down and get rid of it, what you do is you take a deep breath in for roughly 3 or 4 seconds or more, hold it for a millisecond, and then breathe out twice as long. So it would be 6 to 8 seconds. That interrupts the process. And then you simply remember the way you feel when you were relaxed doing guided visualization. This works for a lot of people. Who it doesn't work for is there are some people who are so wired that they can't even do that. Their brain just starts racing, and they can't control it. My advice on that is to keep doing it. Don't put any pressure on yourself, and see if it can get any difference at all, because any difference is better than no difference. And another really, really important tangent is I've been dealing with people who have been trying to get help for their autistic child or something that they suspect is autism. And the waiting, for anybody who's any good, there's a 3 to 4 year waiting list. So what does that suggest? That suggests that the number of people who are having problems is so high. And it also suggests that the amount of people that are good at working with it are so few that they cannot possibly handle the numbers. So you need to kind of do it yourself. The visualization thing, the guided visualization is magical. And if you do it, it'll work. Even if you don't do it, the breathing technique, once again, breathe in for 3 or 4 seconds, hold for a second, and then breathe out for twice as long. It is so incredibly effective, and anyone can do it. The other thing is, real quickly, is that's interesting. Ironic that I said that. The other interesting thing is if you are a slower processor, and a lot of gifted people are slower processors, especially the visual spatial ones, then refuse to be rushed and talk a little slower than you can. Remember to breathe, because breathing is so important, and get it out, but get it out at a slower pace. You are at your best if you're visual when you're going just a little bit slower. Refuse to be pushed into that corner where you have to rush your thoughts and stutter or stumble or say stuff that you don't want to say. Just refuse to play the game. And if they don't want to listen to you, that's their problem. Many people will, if you are a proficient and you have something worth listening to, less than usual. I mean, there was a time when people who spoke slowly and carefully and logically, they were, anybody would listen to them. That's not true anymore. And there's nothing I can tell you to turn that around. That's going to continue to get worse or better, depending on how you look at it. But those, that technique, those 2 techniques are really terrific, and they will work if you use them.
The breathing technique is the exact one that I explained to my niece that I mentioned earlier when I had her picture and visualize something. And the reason why I tried that was, again, there's nothing out there on how to slow down your processing or your perception of time. But my idea was, again, especially for myself, I when I close my eyes, and I don't remember the name of it, but you can look it up as the apple test. If somebody asked me to imagine what an apple looks like and I close my eyes, I see zero, nothing. I just see blackness. If I start actually describing an apple, I start seeing it. And for me, one of the things is, because I deal so much, just because I can't picture, again, the apple in my mind, doesn't mean I can't picture things. I'm a very visual person, and absolutely 100% visual, and I'm definitely pattern based. So it's something based on closing your eyes, being able to conceptualize, and again, you're trying to draw it in. If I see something, then I can hold that image for a few seconds, but even holding it slowed my mind down. So the idea of getting, and another thing that I suggested, and like, especially if your child is someone who's getting complaints from teachers about, standing up, interrupting the class or something like that, have them, when they have something really great to say, try to picture it in terms of a story. Like if they're trying to tell it, Again, it has to be something like more of a preview. And you explain it like that. You can't show everybody the whole show. You have to cut an hour and a half down to a minute preview. And if they can visualize it or kind of at least get some way, or even visualize a road with key points along the road, they can follow it. A lot of times giving visual steps or cues to the thought process will help. And especially for like, if they're trying to write something, there's all these different things, whether it's math, just show them they can come up with their own things. There's not pressure of time. If you can remove that single variable, I know for me, that's a big thing. And of course, there are some people, and you've mentioned people being wound up so tight, I can't even enjoy a vacation. I bring work to vacations. And I just don't know how to relax. So those are things that, people need to start looking at. And I hope all medical experts of every field will listen to this very seriously, because there are so many medications being developed, and there are so many, whether they're anti-anxiety medications, anti-seizure medications, benzodiazepines. There's so many medications being attacked from all these different angles. And doctors need to stop trying to look for all the bad things about everything. And they need to start looking at what's good about each thing, getting back to the balancing of risk to reward, focusing on the most reward for the lowest amount of risk. Stop listening to, again, I want people in every medical field and in a place of power with a platform to be gentle and logical with how they perceive and how they approach new ideas. And I think we need development of medications focusing on looking at, okay, when people drink alcohol, they lose time. They don't remember what they did. When people do a hallucinogen, 30 minutes seems like 5 hours. Well, how come that happens? We can study it. We have MRIs, we have EKGs, we have all of this amazing medical equipment. Why is no one looking? And especially when you look at every form of anxiety, where people are stressed out about being at one place at a certain time, they're worried about driving to a certain place. Everything is about time. And it's just aggravating that it's not a variable that's looked at. And I hope people will be open to the idea. And again, not just about time, but about every medication. Stop putting biases and stigmas on diagnoses, on medications, on everything else. Work with the client. And you know what? If you have a doctor that literally will not even look at anything or even talk to you, you might want to look for someone else. People that have a medical degree still have things and gaps of knowledge. There's no one that's perfect. There's no, again, it's a journey. And when we're talking about mental health, when we're talking about your family, your loved ones, don't settle. Keep searching for someone. You'll find the perfect match, and it's magical when you find that, because then they help you recover. They help you find the right diagnosis, the right medication. There's no bias. There's no stigma. There's not labels being placed and hardened. And that's what we're doing with this show, is trying to explain to other people kind of some of the struggles. I myself struggle with time. So this one's a really personal show for me. Jeffrey, besides, you've always given such phenomenal suggestions. For math, Jeffrey had a bunch of great suggestions for the things that helped me. So please look at his book. It's Right Brain Children in a Left Brain World. New York Times bestseller for a reason. So check that out if you get a chance. Please reach out to us with any questions. And Jeffrey, I want to kind of give you the floor, to kind of close out on this again. We wanted to talk about time because you and I both noticed it, and we've talked about it for so many years. What would you like to close out with? Some of just closing thoughts or ideas for people?
A closing thought would be, people's attention spans are very, very short and getting shorter. And now that I actually use the internet and follow social media, there's such a pressure to be quick, and people's attention spans are too short. And we're down to 10 seconds. Even I'm that way sometimes when I'm on social media. Fight it. Speed and the amount of stuff that you can handle. Maybe you can do it, but can you handle it? Examine the price you're paying, and think about if that's the way you want to go in terms of processing information. And that's my final thought.
I love that. I liked your point of fight it. And again, I'm very passionate about some of these things. And for people listening, they know that anybody who follows me on social media, I've never been super vocal about a lot of things. I'm getting that way because I'm tired of watching certain patterns repeat themselves time and time and time again. So that's what this show is about, is for us to actually give information that's actionable that people can take. And if you have somebody that deals with bipolar, borderline personality disorder, ADHD, autism, just you name it, anxiety, depression, if you listen to all of the shows that we've done, the advice that we've given has helped. I know quite a few people that I've asked, and I sit there and I help them through it. It's phenomenal advice. So Jeffrey, thank you. And I would agree with you 100%. Our attention spans are super short. I don't want to mess with your message. So if you're out there, stretch that attention, try to hold on and be patient with your loved ones, even when they're going on a long ramble, like I often do. Listen, there's going to be a closing point, and oftentimes the things we're not willing to wait for are probably the most spectacular. So hope you all have a great night, and we'll be back again to talk about a different subject. I think we're going to hit autism, which is Jeffrey's specialty. We've been really waiting to get on a roll for that. So I'm looking forward to it. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back soon. Thank you so much for listening to Chaos2Cured podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with everyone you know, and definitely follow, and subscribe. Certainly leave a comment if you'd like. Let us know what you'd like us to talk about the next time. Also, in our show notes, there should be direct links where you can follow us on our social media, as well as reach out to us directly. Thanks again, and have a great day. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on Chaos2Cured podcast are the speaker's own. All discussion is based on our own experiences. We do not and cannot guarantee the accuracy or completeness of any information. Chaos2Cured podcast cannot give medical or health advice. All discussion is based upon our personal experiences and meant for general and educational purposes. This podcast is not a substitute for professional help or for diagnostic purposes for yourself or another. Chaos2Cured podcast always encourages you to consult an appropriate professional.